This content includes graphic imagery that may not be suitable for young audiences. Content includes gore, aggressive deaths, foul language, nudity, drugs, sexuality, etc. By continuing, you acknowledge that you are responsible for your mental health, and the risk you are taking by watching this content. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hello everyone and welcome to The Devil's Den. The Devil's Den is a series created by me, of course, where I review horror games, movies, or anything that's really a part of the horror genre.
Of course, it would not be complete without the handsome devil himself to insert fear and dominance into place.
Except that this particular devil is just annoying and just a complete douche. But yeah, this series definitely wouldn't be complete without you, I guess. Anyways, this series is all about the horror genre. We like to inspire people to have conversation about what we review in this series. Also, I like to kindly say that I am not in any way, shape, or form a professional reviewer. I'm just some Joe Smo who just loves the horror genre and likes to give an honest opinion on it. At the end of each review, the product will be given a score verdict alongside with a medal.
Medals that include the handsome face of my handsome devil.
But it would not be complete without the gorgeous face I am looking at now.
Oh god, seriously, get a fucking room, you two. No one wants to see two abominations going at it.
How dare—
First medal, from a score verdict of 0 to 2, is the shit medal. Anything that gets this medal should never even get attention. The product that receives this medal is absolutely shit beyond belief with so many, if not too many problems. Honestly, I do kind of feel bad for anything that does get this medal. It's just really bad. The second medal, from a score verdict of 3 to 4, is the stone medal. Not as bad as the shit medal, but it certainly isn't good either. Just as boring and dull as the Rock looks, the product receiving this medal is no different than the Rock. Plenty of problems and not enough love and care put into the work at all. But I guess it could have been worse. A score verdict of 5 will be receiving the bronze medal. This medal represents a product that is neither good nor bad. Technically, the product just exists. It's just kinda there without any real meaning. A score verdict of 6 to 7 will grant the silver medal, a damn good product to deserve a damn good medal, but it still does have many problems that could have made it better, but nevertheless, it's a good game. But the real prize is the gold medal, which is a score verdict of 8 to 9, almost just perfect if it didn't have the problems that it did. Whatever gets this medal is considered a very well-rounded product that deserves attention immediately. It's just a really damn good game. But the ultimate medal, the ultimate perfection, is a pure platinum medal. A perfect score of 10 will gladly grant this medal to a perfect product. Now listen, I go through these reviews with honesty and I don't hold nothing back. And I really do hope that you guys do the same with your comments. I'm just a really honest person. If there are problems, I'm just gonna say how I feel about them and I'm gonna let you know that there are problems. If there aren't any problems, I'm just gonna say what was good about the product and what was bad about it.
We take requests and suggestions as well. If you have something you like to see, please use this format.
So if you could do this, this would make my life so much easier. Just capitalize and bold the words request, suggestion, and question. Because this will help me know who requested what, or who had a question, or who suggested what. So it makes it easier to see. If you could do that, that would be such a help for me. Anyways, thank you guys for watching and I hope you enjoyed the review. Please be sure to leave a comment about your opinions and be sure to check out our Facebook page and our Discord server. You know, for having to live through hell, you'd think I would have been already dead. Seriously, how the hell do you live through this?
I do not have a choice just as much as you. You will never escape this hell.
Ever thought of suicide?
Fuck the thought of it. I actually committed suicide back in 1970. I was born in 1950 in France, and when I became 20, I was a butler for a rich married man, but I fell in love with his wife and we had planned to kill her husband, so that we could be together. But in the end, after murdering her husband, she had betrayed me by poisoning my food, so now I am forever trapped in this endless void as a servant to the overlord of hell.
Jesus Christ, Peter. I mean, that fucking sucks. Is this whole ordeal for eternity down here?
No, when I was sent down here, I pleaded for forgiveness and redemption, so the devil and I made a deal. It was either die a horrible man or serve him for as long as he desired. If I serve him well enough, I can go to heaven. But it is not so bad, my dear. I understand Satan may seem ridiculous, but he is a reasonable man. When you came here, I do not think Satan understood what to do with you.
So, what you're trying to say to me is that this demon is a reasonable man, and that...
Peter, what the fuck are you doing? I was for sure that I ordered you to not bother this child.
I apologize, my lord. All my duties have been completed. The poor child seems so lonely. I shall return to my chamber immediately.
As for you, what is your next review?
I have no mouth and I must scream. Satan, listen, I
have no intentions of hearing anything you have to say. Get to work now. I will not be here for the beginning of this review, but Tina shall keep you company.
Oh, come on, does she really have to be here?
Oh yes, she does. And if you behave, I might let you out of that cage, but do not try and escape like last time.
Fine, whatever. It's not like it changes the fact we're still in hell, cage or not. Reasonable, my ass. So, for many people who don't really know anything about I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, originally it was a book written by Harlan Ellison, who was also the co-designer in making the game version. The book is a post-apocalyptic science fiction short story that was first published in March 1967. Of course, I've never read it, but I can assume that it had to be a very well-written book since it had won a Hugo Award in 1968. The name was also used for a short story collection of Ellison's work featuring this story. It was reprinted by the Library of America, collected in Volume 2, Terror and the Uncanny from the 1940s to now, of American Fantastic Tales 2009. But of course, a blast to the future. On October 31st, 1995, Cyber Dreams and the Dreamers Guild co-designer Harlan Ellison had released I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream as a point-and-click adventure game that takes place in a dystopian world where a mastermind artificial intelligence named Am has destroyed all of humanity except for 5 people, whom he has been keeping alive and torturing for the past 109 years by constructing metaphorical adventures based on each character's fatal flaws. The player interacts with the game by making decisions through ethical dilemmas that deal with issues such as insanity, rape, paranoia, and genocide. Ellison wrote the 130-page script treatment himself alongside David Sears, who decided to divide each character's story with their own narrative. Producer David Mulich supervised the Dreamers Guild work on the game's programming, art, and sound effects. He commissioned film composer John Ottman to make the soundtrack. The game had been labeled Best Game Adapt from Linear Media from the Computer Game Developers Conference. Computer Gaming World gave the game an award for Adventure Game of the Year, listed it as 134 on their 150 games of all time, and named it one of the best 15 sleepers of all time. In 2011, Adventure Gamers named it the 69th best adventure game ever released. However, though, at the time of its release in 1995, it was indeed a commercial failure. Even though it received critical praise, its French and German releases were censored due to Nazi themes, which I guess is understandable for those cultures, not to mention the fact that the game was also restricted for players under the age of 18. The game was published by Cyber Dreams on October 31st, 1995 for PCs with MS, DOS, and Mac OS. A PlayStation version was planned to be released in summer 1995 but was cancelled. Cyber Dreams had developed a reputation in the early 1990s of selling computer games with science fiction, cyberpunk storylines, and adult violence, sexual, philosophical, and psychological content. Now, because the French and German releases were censored, the game had to be changed drastically, meaning that Nimdok chapters would be removed due to the Nazi theme, especially for Germany because at the time they had a reaction of the Federal Department for Media Harmful to Young Persons to National Socialist topics, whatever the fuck that means. I guess German history classes don't mix well with media too often, whatever. It's not like anybody really gives a shit, especially considering the game is rated M anyways, so I'm not really sure what the hell they were trying to achieve. But because the chapter was removed, it made achieving the best ending with Am permanently disabled and the cryogenically frozen humans on Luna rescued more complicated. So if you lived in France or Germany especially, good luck trying for that best ending, cause you're fucked. The game remained abandoned for years due to the closure of both the developer and publisher. Luckily for us old game lovers, in 2013 the rights were recovered by Night Dive Studios. It was possible to re-release the game again as a digital download on GOG.com and on Steam in October. Both sites, GOG.com and Steam, give the game away for $6 and can be enjoyed by people who like the genre of point-and-click science fiction with dark elements. When you first start up the game, you are presented with 5 playable characters. Unless you live in France and Germany, then I guess it would be 4. The control of the game is extremely simple. Just use only the mouse and click. The overall style of the gameplay consists of solving puzzles and finding items that would progress each character's story. As you can see on the screen, you have plenty of options to choose from, whether it be walking, talking, taking, giving, using, etc, etc. All of these commands are pretty useful, I guess, when it comes to exploring the environments. You'll mostly be interacting and trying to find items and choosing the right dialogue to say to certain characters. The gameplay isn't something to rave about like crazy, but the gameplay is enjoyable with its puzzles, its different environments to interact with. I really liked all the options they give you to use alongside with the dialogue that affects the spiritual meter on the bottom left. Now, whether or not the players go the route of redeeming the characters is entirely up to them, but I will say you have to do very specific things in order to keep your spiritual meter up to get the true ending. The gameplay can be really good for people who are more interested in a well-told story and want a simple gameplay that doesn't ask for too much. The game's puzzles aren't too hard and they don't feel too easy.
You ever wonder if the gameplay could have been more obvious with telling you what you should be doing?
Well, maybe not be obvious, but maybe a bit more helpful in a subtle way. I can't tell you how many times I missed certain items and didn't understand what the hell to do next.
I thought I was the only one. We must be very incompetent for not understanding what the game wants. I was struggling to get through Gorster's chapter and Ted's chapter.
Oh my god, I thought I was the only one. It probably is a bit of an overstretch to say incompetent, I think. It's kind of not our fault that the game isn't as clear as it should be in some cases. And don't get me wrong, I love my games to keep challenging me. But when I was playing Gorster's chapter, I had taken the bloody key. Now there is a book in your inventory that gives you clues on what you should do next. However, it's in riddles, which is more than fine. But what I didn't realize was that you were supposed to wipe your hands on the tablecloth. The book kept talking about Macbeth's wife feeling guilt and shit, but I didn't think to wipe Gorster's hands on the dirty tablecloth, so of course the book stays in the same place until you actually do the very thing it's telling you to do. And unfortunately, it's the same with other characters. Now, I'm not blind at all, but sometimes for some reason it is really easy to miss a few things and not understand specific things you were actually supposed to do for the best ending.
I still think we were both dumb. Most of it is pretty easy anyways once you realize what to do.
Yeah, that's true, cause God knows I get fucking retarded when it comes to solving puzzles. But seriously, I had to literally look up a walkthrough, and after looking one up, I didn't realize just how much specific you had to be. The gameplay can sometimes be very specific, especially at the ending, because depending on what ending you're trying to obtain, it's very important to do things very specifically. But overall, I enjoyed the experience with the gameplay. Even with its problems, it's still very fun and engaging. So I'm not really complaining too much, but what I really wanted to talk about was the story.
It is about time you started talking about the story. I only wish Satan was here. He read the entire book. I need to ask for it. I've been wanting to read it for so long.
So, where is your tall, handsome, reasonable demon anyways?
He is at a meeting with his minions. HES also preparing for us to meet his family.
Meet his family? Yeah, I don't think so. I'd rather not join that event of affairs.
You do not have a choice, unless you want to stay inside a cage for a long time. Oh, I just could not wait for me, Satan, you and Pierre to visit the other world.
So what are me and Pierre, your pets or something?
Perhaps. Listen, little girl, we need to talk about the story now. I will tell you more later.
The story is more of the main focus. Now, I've explained a good majority of the storyline already, so I'll try not to ramble too much. The sum of everything, basically America, China, and Russia, or just simply put, humanity, created the ultimate computer artificial intelligence to destroy each other. Unfortunately, the AI was just too advanced for humans to handle, so as consequence, the computer started to absorb the Chinese and Russian computers into itself, and thus named itself AM. AM had grown a serious hatred for humans and ended up committing a genocide of eliminating all humans except for 5, Ted, Ellen, Nimdok, Gorster, and Benny. He enslaved them so that they could be tortured for 109 years. Because AM had killed off the world, it's become completely uninhabitable due to the radioactive environment. So of course the game's style and theme isn't just about dealing with a post-apocalypse and surviving it. What makes the story extremely disturbing is the fact that life isn't something to get to, but rather away from. At this point, one could say life is so sacred and whatever, but I mean, you would rather suffer for an eternity under a tyrant who hates you and loves seeing you suffer? I mean, say whatever you want about some of the most painful and gruesome deaths you witness in any other game, but I find living for an eternity only to suffer is a far worse fate than anything. Before I talk about our poor main characters, I like to do the favor of actually talking about the villain, who I really want to talk about because while the 5 main characters are indeed very interesting, I just personally believe that AM himself is just more fascinating as a person.
AM does not just seem fascinating, he is fascinating, considering the fact he is an artificial intelligence.
There are just so many speculations you can make about AM that it's unbelievable. When you really narrow it down to the simplest thing, you have to ask a question. Is AM's hatred for humanity justified? I would probably say yes, it is. AM's personality tends to consist of being an energetic, charismatic, sadistic man. Funnily enough, AM is also pretty egotistical and arrogant, which is pretty ironic, don't you think? I find it interesting how AM has so much character, and of course I feel that makes the whole entire concept so much more fascinating, because AM does hate humanity, right? But yet, he inhabits the worst kind of flaws any human can have, and this is from a computer that's supposed to be more advanced than humans. I mean, let's talk about his hatred for humanity really quickly. He's not really wrong for hating the very beings that made him live through an endless hell. Just imagine for a moment never being able to move, explore, not even being able to talk, hence the name I have no mouth and I must scream. For AM, every second is another 1,000 years, and that 1,000 years feels like a millions of years. Imagine being suicidal and death was the only sanctuary that you have, and technically speaking, it's the only real peace for every character here, including AM himself. While I can say that AM has logical reasons for having a revenge cycle, I'm surprised he hasn't just allowed himself to die. Think about it for a moment. AM really has nothing to look forward to in his existence, so why do you think he's been torturing 5 people who have been tortured for about 109 years? As much as AM hates humanity, ironically enough, I say he's no different than them, and he's just as flawed as humans, because face it, why hasn't AM committed suicide? Sure, one could say that AM is just like any other human and is probably afraid to die, or whatever you would really say to this. But is AM really afraid to die? And sure, you might be saying, well, it's a revenge thing and his mind is too busy trying to get revenge and all that other stuff. But I say at this point, if all the survivors died, what real purpose would AM have anymore? In a very sinister way, these humans might just be the only purpose and pleasure that AM has in his existence and the only real reason to be alive in the first place. But just like any other human, he inhabits flaws as well.
Does it not make you question about the ideal of sentience and intelligence?
Well, of course it does, especially when you consider that a computer such as AM is able to be defeated so easily in the end.
Because AM is human as well, and I think AM is the manifestation of what we all truly feel towards humanity deep down. Every existence hates other existences and even itself. I don't think AM has any purpose but to relish in his own hatred of humanity. As much as AM hates humans, they're the only reason he is still keeping himself alive. AM hates humans and yet he is human. He has the worst flaws any human could have. My point is, what if all existences are never meant to be perfect? Perfection is never obtainable. We would like to think AM is perfect and is God, but he is flawed as the rest of us.
Well, you're definitely right, Dina, and it's especially true for his personality. I find it hard to believe that AM has the personality that he has. For a machine that's been through what's probably worse than hell, you'd think he'd be more sinister and evil sounding and just suicidal or something. I like to think it was for a good reason for the developers to have AM be this way, since I'm guessing they wanted to make sure that AM actually felt alive and not something that seemed so dead and soulless, which in my honest opinion would have been fitting, but that's subjective anyways on how you see it. I like that AM is definitely entertaining at best, but I sometimes wish his pain was more visible on the surface. I feel like AM could have or better yet, should have had multiple personalities or just different sides of him where he shows his own pain and questions his own existence. I don't know. I just feel like AM could have had more in him as a character. Either way, AM to me is the most fascinating character out of all of them. The ending is something that is the most cruelest, and I sometimes think that AM wanted the other characters to defeat him. I mean, think about it for a moment. AM has been torturing them for 109 years. He had to get bored sometime, right? And I sometimes think it just proves that some of us human beings need some sort of challenge sometimes in our lives, or else we'll have no purpose in it. Maybe that's why we'll never reach perfection, because perfection means no more challenges. AM has been godlike for so many years that now he's ready for something different. But he's so arrogant and egotistical that he literally thinks he's perfection, until his surprise the humans are actually able to defeat him and overcoming their own fears. But enough about AM, let's talk about the humans now. I'm going to start with the most interesting character to the least interesting character in my opinion. I think the character I found the most interesting is Nimdok. Nimdok is very interesting because he was indeed a Nazi back so many years ago, and it's weird to know that Nimdok's story was censored in France and Germany. Not that I blamed him at the time, but it really does make you question certain things, doesn't it? Because of the censorship, the game's best ending would be more complicated because, as you should know, Nimdok is the main character that can achieve the best ending possible. Nimdok's storyline consists of being in a Nazi camp where cruel human experiments take place, but Nimdok seems to either forget about his past or is just in complete denial of it. The reason I find Nimdok the most interesting is because we know that Nimdok is probably the most irredeemable character, but yet we're somehow still able to feel sympathy for this man, and I think it's because he actually regrets what he's done, and it's made clear that all he wants is redemption, including with the best ending. Even after being tortured for 109 years, this man truly feels like he deserves it. Even in the end, when he's turned into the blob with no mouth, he still feels like this is what he deserves. If we were to have only one main character, I feel like Nimdok would be the best choice. I personally love Nimdok because there's just something about the idea of an unredeemable monster that just regrets everything that he's done, but is willing to do anything to redeem himself and his morality that was lost years ago. The best ending with Nimdok makes the most sense because out of all the characters, he is actually the one to destroy AM and help humanity recover itself, and if that isn't redeeming, then I don't know what the hell is. The second most interesting character to me is Gorster. Gorster's storyline is about making amends with his past life of guilt towards dead wife Glynis. Gorster, unlike other characters, is the most suicidal, which is probably a little ironic, since you think about the other characters. Gorster for me really just sets the tone of what suicide is like. It's funny because you would think that the other characters would just be as lifeless as he is. Gorster's storyline feels the most empty out of all of them. It's not about redeeming yourself, overcoming a great fear, and not even about moving on. I mean, yes, Gorster does need to let go of the past just like every other character, but what I'm saying is, Gorster makes the reality seem even more horrifyingly, depressingly sad. Ellen, I guess, was pretty interesting enough. She's discarded into this yellow pyramid, which is a complete nightmare. After have lived a very hard life of working extremely hard to become a professional programmer and suffered the loss of a miscarriage. But the most damage that was done with Ellen was when she was raped in the elevator by a janitor in a yellow suit. It's the reason why Ellen hates the color yellow, which quite frankly got on my nerves really quickly because you think picking up a simple yellow object wouldn't be that hard. I guess it's understandable enough though, for someone like myself who's been molested by her own father for years until 15 going on 16, I can kindly tell you that rape fucks you up mentally, emotionally, and physically. So I don't really want to judge badly, but Ellen's fear of the color yellow just doesn't seem realistic enough, I'm guessing, but who am I to really say what makes people tick, right? Before I played this game, I knew there was going to be some rape somewhere, but at least I was hoping that they would have done a bit more with the idea. You're probably thinking, oh, so you just want a video game to represent how you deal with serious issues. I mean, no, of course not. It's not about representing anything.
Oh, you poor child. What father could do something so...
Dina, I don't want to talk about the past, especially not on this channel. Whatever happened in my past is done and over with. Look, I'm not saying I don't sympathize and empathize with Ellen, it's just that I feel like the way it plays out is kind of unrealistic to me. But what the fuck does a depressed fuck like me know anything about how everyone reacts to these type of things? I don't know, maybe I'm just a callous hard fuck, but I feel like they should have done more with Ellen's rape in my opinion. She does get anxiety when confronted with the color, and it does build up to the ultimate confrontation with her rapist, and she does fight back and overcome her fear of yellow. You'd think I would have made her my most interesting character of the game, but I found myself feeling like they could have done more with her instead of just giving her the fear of yellow. Like, maybe if they illustrated some more things in her character, I might have felt like she could have been a lot more interesting. While personally I'm not into sassy black women, I will say I'm glad they gave her character and some personality. Benny, our next character, who was the most altered in comparison to the book, was a harsh and brutal military leader who killed his soldiers if they stepped out of line and didn't keep quiet about his behavior. His legs are crippled by Am and is put into a forest with a tribe leader that sacrifices one of his people to Am in the name of keeping his whole tribe safe. In order for Benny to make amends, he must learn to have compassion for others and exchange his life for the boy that he meets in the tribe. Benny seems to be obsessed with food, but the food that he eats hurts him. I didn't find Benny to really be someone that was like super duper serious as the other characters. I really didn't mind Benny, but I really didn't care for him as much as I did for the others. It's extremely weird just seeing how much they changed Benny from the book. From what I understand from my research, Benny was actually a homosexual scientist, and Ellen was a sex-crazed addict who only wanted to have sex with Benny because his sexual organs were much bigger than the rest of the men. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I think the book was probably a lot more darker. The least favorable character is Ted. Ted. He is definitely a weird one here. Ted in his past was known for screwing women for their money by using his handsome charms. Strangely enough, Ted is in love with Ellen, which I find a little strange because it's never really explained why Ted loves Ellen so much, and to make things even weirder, his storyline consists of medieval stuff, with of course Ellen being the damsel in distress princess whose stepmother wants her dead. Yeah, basically it's a Snow White recreational thing. Yeah, Ted is a really strange guy. He has a fear of the dark. He doesn't really have much personality other than the fact that he's a playboy who desperately wants to be the knight in shining armor. Yeah, it's really weird. See, my problem is that I don't understand where the theme comes from. I really don't. I feel like Ted is a boring character. So the creators just added this theme in the name of trying to make Ted interesting, but instead it failed to do so. I wouldn't have minded the theme if only it was fitting for the character, but here nor there, whatever. When it comes to the music and the sound effects, I think all of it was really fitting. It really does set the tone for the game. The voice acting for all characters is kinda weird because they aren't bad, but they're definitely not the best. Well, it can really be shown in the ending where all of the characters just really sound like they just don't give a damn. A lot of the voice acting just doesn't sound very, it doesn't really sound lively. It's just like it's just there, kind of most of the time. It's not bad voice acting, but sometimes it's definitely not the best. But everything about the story is awesome. There are its few flaws, but it doesn't stop it from being a damn good experience. I feel like everything about the story really makes you question science and just how bad it can get if not careful. The ending of the game is probably one of the best endings I have seen in a long while. I love how each character gets their own version in explaining how they themselves are turned into a motionless blob. The best speech and the most devastating goes to Gorster. I love how Gorster's speech builds up to the ultimate final sentence, like, I have no skull, I have no throat, and now I have no mouth and I must scream. His is the most devastating because imagine trying everything in your power to just end your own life because it's the only sanctuary you have, and now you're living in this eternity never being able to die. Gorster's is the worst because he doesn't even have any psychological peace with his fate, and to make it even worse, you can tell in his voice that he's just given up completely. Ellen's speech comes in a close second, but the best acting goes to Benny. You just hear the sheer panic that Benny has being turned into something horrible. Also, when I said psychological peace with the fate at hand, what I mean is that unlike Gorster, Nimdok and Ted at the very least can relish in their fate with some peace. See, Nimdok already sees himself as this disgusting demon that kinda deserves this fate, so psychologically speaking, the cruelest villain actually gets the least trauma from this. But overall, the story is definitely an interesting experience. It's dark, it's cryptic, it's just a really fascinating story. I think the overall experience of the story, I think it's a little weird how there are some parts that I think could have had more development. Having the characters interact with one another could have made it a lot more personal and a lot more real and lively. I just can't help but feel like it's extremely awkward that these characters never really communicate with each other, and it makes the story just seem weird and just kind of like very linear and just stiff. I would have also liked that they developed the characters' backstories just a little bit more. Interestingly enough, there were a few deleted scenes. I'll leave the links in the description, but it's funny seeing the deleted scenes, especially the one with Benny eating a baby. I personally wish they would have kept that though. It would have made the story even more messed up. But we reached to the end, and now we can talk about the conclusion of it. The game is definitely a great game. It's not perfect, but it's understandable on how this game was rated the best adventure game, and it's especially worth the $6. I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream is a very well made game. Sure, it has some flaws both in gameplay and story, but I think we come to the end of our review. So what score, verdict, and medal is this game getting? I think a verdict of 8 out of 10 is good, and that is indeed a gold medal. So if you're interested in buying the game, like I said before, you can get it on GOG.com and on Steam for $6. But of course, me and Dina would like to thank you for watching this review, and to be sure that you guys have the best experience, and any recommendations that you think we should do, leave us a request for our next season of reviews down below.
Be sure to read the book. Satan told me it was good.
Is it better than the game's version of the story?
I am not sure, little girl.
Oh well, I guess me and the audience will just have to find out for ourselves.